Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Top Cyber Pro podcast. I'm founder and CEO Jim West. Today, I have a wonderful guest. He's got a lot of hats. All my guests usually wear multiple hats, but this gentleman is a cybersecurity advisor, public speaker, and he's a host of his own podcast, The Keyboard Samurai, which is a phenomenal name, if I do say so myself. Without further ado, we have Will Klusovsky. Hopefully, I got it right the first time on pronouncing it. So, Will, welcome to the Top Cyber Pro podcast.
Jim, glad to be here. Excited. Always happy to talk about myself.
Well, let's get right to it. First, let's just talk about the Keyboard Samurai podcast. I mean, what an epic name there for a podcast. So let's talk a little bit about the why of that podcast.
Sure. I will say anybody who's seen the movie Hackers will be able to deduce where the name came from. There's a little wordplay there. And anybody who's listening to this who is in the cybersecurity space and hasn't seen the movie Hackers, you now have 24 hours to go watch it or you lose your card.
Yeah.
That's how it goes. Yeah, so I mean, it started. I loved doing these podcasts as a guest. It's funny. You've probably had the same thing. A lot of us, I think, have like not necessarily imposter syndrome, but like we do the same thing so much, and our industry is so rooted in like it's always just identify the risk and find the problem. Like it's not rocket science once you figure it out. We feel like we've been saying the same thing a lot of times. And I realized that actually wasn't the case. Like I had things to share with people, and mostly I like to be able to meet cool people. And I would
Yep.
have, I'm very active on LinkedIn, and I would, most pretty much when I connect with somebody, I say hi. I'd love to chat with you, and I mean it. Like I'm not pitching anybody. We'll have coffee, a beer, whatever. And I was like, some of these conversations are pretty useful. I should record these, and so that's kind of where it went to.
I love it. Just interesting conversations with interesting people, right? And that's amazing. So, what was some of the most interesting perspectives or topics that came up in the journey so far of your podcast?
Oh yeah, so I've done a lot. First off, it's never really technical, right? I'll talk to CISOs and CEOs, CMOs, doesn't matter, of businesses or of cybersecurity companies. I've done a lot because I do a lot of work in the GTM space, just in my career. I've had conversations there. So I think honestly, I did one very recently about like SMS scams, which actually was quite technical, but the conversation wasn't technical. The guest knew about the industry and was talking about the telcos and why the things work the way they are. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like I learned a lot, right? And from that standpoint. Then I've had some really cool ones about like the vendor landscape and the marketplace. I've had guys on who like live in the VC world, other people who live in the channel world. And then I'm actually doing one I'm excited about because everybody this is I'm going to record next week I think with a big pen tester on LinkedIn, and he I was like, so is pen testing going away because of AI? And everybody's like, oh, I can do a red team engagement with a push of a button now. And so we're going to have a really interesting conversation about that one I'm looking forward to.
All right. Well, folks, you can pause this video right now. We'll have a link to all of the channels and both audio, and I'm sure it's on YouTube as well. All those links and more is going to be in the description. So I'm going to save you that Google search. So let's dive into a couple of your businesses. You have a cybersecurity advisory firm called VLogix. So let's talk a little bit about what is the mission of VLogix.
Yeah, I mean, we're your I don't want to say typical because we're not typical, but managed security services provider and strategic consulting. So, and there's a lot of people out there providing managed security. Sure, we can do your MDR, XDR, your SIM, monitor your whole world. But we do take a very strategic approach to it. Like we talked just before I joined, I was going to say this word, asset management, right? So we come in with that foundational look at if you don't know what you have, you don't know what to protect, right? So while we're doing the typical monitor your network and look for bad things and stop them from happening and contain it, we're also helping organizations build better budgets and build better programs and come at things strategically because everybody that's listening to this knows you could spend all the money, all the revenue you ever make and still need to do things in security,
Hmm.
right? So, being able to see things with that asset level visibility, being able to see the attack paths. That's the other part of it, which is in the world of AI, the bad people are going to move faster than the good people. It's just going to happen. So you're going to get a bazillion vulnerabilities. If you need to know what to remediate, That's going to come from looking at it from the attacker perspective. So being able to look at it from the outside in and have that attack path mapping, that exposure management. So that context, like really big about that. So and that's what we look to do. We look for partner organizations, people who really want us to handle their cybersecurity or some section of it, whether it's just managing their GRC program or whether it is doing, being their security operations center for them or running their strategy, whatever it may be.
So speaking about those like attack pathways and flows and so forth from the attacker perspective, what are your opinions and thoughts about the MITRE attack framework, which has gotten a lot of love in the past few years? I've also had a couple folks from MITRE on the podcast. I've had Keith Wilson recently this season actually come back and talk about the CTIM, and I've also had John Baker, who's one of the founder of the CTID. But what are your perspectives and thoughts of the attack framework when you're mentioning attack flows and pathways?
Yeah, I'm going to be the first to tell you I'm a generalist, so I know a whole little about a lot. And by that, like I understand what the MITRE framework's used for. I also remember the cyber kill chain when it came out of Lockheed
Yep.
Martin and we were using that and how that all evolved. So I do very much love that we have evolved that sort of um, walkway, that pathway of how things are actually going in and being able to dial in on exactly where the east west lateral movements happening, where the all that good stuff's happening. So yeah, I don't have like strong hacker I say hacker strong like pen testery opinions about it because I don't actually use it all the time. But I do believe you need to have some visibility into that attack path. Like you need to know if you don't have context, then nothing else. Like if just like anything else, anything can be taken out of context and be misconstrued. Your vulnerabilities are the same way. Your risks are the same way. That's the same way we talk about asset management. If I ask somebody, what's your most important system? I ask a CEO, a CFO, and a director of finance. They're all
Four
going to have
different
different
answers.
answers, right? Now combine that with they all have vulnerabilities, and then now you've got an attack path mapping that you can kind of use, and it, to me, puts it all together because I'm a big picture guy.
Yeah. And so you mentioned asset management, which is, it's one of the foundational principles of security, period, is you got to know what you have to secure it, right? And a lot of organizations, no matter how mature their programs may be, always struggle with this. So from your perspectives, what are some of the common reasons why organizations are constantly getting this one wrong?
It's the same reason they spend money in the wrong. Well, I guess it all kind of leads back to that. I was gonna say it's the same reason that a lot of projects fail or take longer. Also, it's because in our industry and just in technology in general, I think everybody is in a hurry to get to the boxes, to the blinky lights, to the cool stuff, right? And they're like, well, we'll just figure. And we're all those kind of. I guarantee most of us in the industry are all figured out people, right? We don't necessarily need a lot of planning and pursue. We're like, I will plug it in and work through it. And I think what happens is, and what I've seen and what I advise is, if you take just a little bit of extra time up front in doing that planning at whatever it is, it's going to eliminate all those roadblocks and those bumps that are absolutely going to happen that are going to cause delays. And it's a matter of like explaining that. And I think asset management is the same way. I think most people, they have their business and they're like, oh, we need firewalls and cloud security and monitor my endpoint. Well, okay, but they don't ever ask the business question of, well, what happens if, well, first off, how do you even make your money? Right.
Yeah.
So if I go to a manufacturing client, it's really easy. The Rockwell devices, these Siemens devices, they pump out widgets. You go to a healthcare organization, well, I have to serve clients. Okay, well, what systems make that happen? And I recognize when I was building specific practice areas like that, that was one of those areas where once you change the conversation, then they start thinking about it differently. And then it's very easy to go, oh, okay, well, we were just thinking cybersecurity was this like IT thing we had to do also, not an actual business protection type of thing. And I think that's why so many have it messed up. And also, I think most people, not most people, a lot of organizations, I know and other auditors, assessors will sympathize with me. I've gone in and asked, hey, do you have an asset inventory? And they show me a spreadsheet of printers and laptops. And I'm like, that's great. Where's all your data and applications and business processes, right? And who owns those? Well, IT owns it. No, IT doesn't own anything.
Yeah.
IT makes the systems run. HRIS is owned by the HR person, right? So I think it's just that we've been sitting in we're crawling out of the IT closet.
It's a good point that you bring up about like that data flow or information flow, having those pathways mapped, or whether you do it via a diagram or other tool that can visualize that for you. And so a lot of people think they have an idea of what makes their businesses run, but until someone really comes in to guide them to that, which is where I'm assuming where you come in, where you guide them to that visualization or really how it actually works, because they have an idea, but until you actually show them, no, actually this is how it works, and these are your, I guess, critical choke points, because that's another thing a lot of businesses don't understand, that when it comes to like having your network breached or having data exfilled from your network, there are certain things that when you look at a vulnerability assessment, you might have like 50,000 things on it, but you probably only really need to fix about 20 to 30 of those to effectively or raise the shields up enough to deter or defend against most of those critical choke point attacks. So with all your experience with VLogix, what has been one of the most biggest challenges or most complex challenges you've had to face, whether in dealing with a customer that may have, got their head in the sand, as some of us will refer to it as, or maybe this they had a much bigger complex challenge than what they initially thought they had when they came to you.
I mean, the two things you said kind of happen all the time. Um, because it's very common for and this is like a sales go-to-market marketing sort of side of the world. Most executives, they who's not the CISO or CIO who's responsible, and a lot of mid-market companies don't have those,
Hmm.
right? So there's a COO or a director of operations or a CEO with a team of 50 people or whatever. These 50 to two couple thousand people organizations don't always have that knowledge in hand, and so when you just ask them, "Hey, what are you doing for cybersecurity?" They're like, "Oh, we've got it covered," right? I've had people tell me, "Oh, we have fill in the blank GRC product here." And I'm like, "Okay, that's great. Like that's really good for your evidence collection and that's going to help you get your SOC 2, which you probably need because you're on a contract somewhere. But are you monitoring anything in your network? Are you do you have are you doing I mean, I've seen organizations of, well over 4,000 people who aren't even doing vulnerability scans,
Hmm.
right? Much less monitoring anything. They got an IT team of 2 to 3 people who are very young and junior folks and have no idea how to, build a program. I can tell you the amount of times whenever I speak somewhere and do a public session, I always, there's invariably the people come up and ask questions. And I remember one time I had 3 or 4 people who I was basically like in that short time saying, well, here's how you build a cybersecurity program, asset identification, criticality, data flow diagrams, compliance, blah, blah, blah. Here's the roadmap, get it budgeted. And I asked one, I was like, what do you do? And so and so's like, I'm the ISO of a major, a city and a major organization within that state or government. And she's just out of college and she's in charge of building. She's never done it before, right? So I think that's the biggest challenge is one, people assume that they're okay because they kind of like brush this off to be like, oh, it's just IT stuff and not understanding the business because they've never said, well, what happens if these things go down? And then two, there's just so much needed in our industry. And this is frustrating part, not to go off on a separate tangent, but like, there's so many of us looking for work and there's so much work to be done. That's just it's not being filled. So that gap right there, I think, is just creating a lot of challenges for everybody.
One of the specialties in your career that I've done a little bit of research on your background, and one of the big specialties you bring is that translation piece of the technical to the business side, right? And a lot of us have that debate about, well, the technical people that are super sharp on the technical side need to learn and maybe take some courses, like whether an MBA or some kind of business course to gain that, whether it's just a lexicon, but at a minimum, the
Mhm.
lexicon so we can speak the same language, but ultimately understanding business operations, how a business needs to survive and run, right? And to merge that with the technical knowledge. And sometimes we say, well, why can't the business people get a little bit of the technical knowledge? Which one is easier? But as a translator to both, what are your perspectives on that?
I love that because the easy answer to that is as a CISO, security leader, IT leader, that's your job. Like that's what you've been hired. Your job is not to tell the CEO and the CFO and the COO they need to get smarter about it. Your job is to find the things that they care about and then frame it in a way they can make a decision. They're running a business. They have
Yep.
10, you've got 10,000 things to worry about. So do they. We're all, the collective we of the leadership team needs to be able to make a decision based on you giving them information. Here's the bad thing that could happen. Here's what that means financially. Here's what it'll cost to get rid of it, 90% of the way. Here's what it costs to get 50% of the way, or you can just accept it. That's all you got to do, right? And it's so that whole idea, like, yeah, it is. I do see the frustration, like, well, they should be smarter. They care, but they care. It's just a matter of terminology, right? You're coming out with CVEs and the critical downtime and stuff. Be like, look, go to the COO. Your shop floor is going to shut down. I guarantee. You know what? I have a perfect example. I talked to somebody, individual contributor, messaged me on LinkedIn. I was like, I really like what you're saying, but like, I don't have that financial information. I'm like, that's great. When you're in a meeting with the director of finance or somebody there, just ask them. Be like, okay, I found a vulnerability in this system, which means this thing could go down. You probably know if that system's down, that machine's down, how much money we lose a minute or an hour or a day, right? Okay. Average time to recover is 36 hours, 40. Like you can pull that data somewhere and like you don't have to have all the information. You just have to ask the questions to the right people sometimes too.
And I love that because once you quantify it and put a price tag on it, now decisions get easier to make. So instead of trying to argue the qualitative side, like, oh, we could be breached, a percentage of attack or whatever, but when you say 36 hours and at a cost of this, then that's an easy decision. Well, what is it going to take to fix it? Oh, it's going to take this, and so forth.
Yeah.
I think those are easier decisions when you can quantify, put a hard dollar amount on it. So with that translation, and you've been doing this for quite some time, so what was some of the earlier, not roadblocks, but like the learning steps you've had to go when you first started trying to translate the technical to the business side?
Well, I will say I didn't come out of the womb this way. I definitely was just like everybody else. There was a time where I'm like, why are people so stupid? Why don't you get this? I worked I worked in IT and security for a while and running, I had network teams and server teams and we were worried about email inbox sizes and all of this stuff
Yeah.
and 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 I realized then that like the organization doesn't care about that stuff as long as it's working, right?
Hmm.
And that's because they have other jobs to do, right? If you work in a retail organization, your district managers have 20, 30 stores that they're getting inventory for, and they're trying to figure out why their managers aren't hiring people. They don't care if their email inbox is full, or they don't care that, like the VPN needs to just work if you're going to make it work,
Hmm.
right? Or they need the convenience of they maybe want the smaller laptop because they're on a plane all the time, right? All of these little things and I think that's the hardest thing for a lot of us because we're very technical and we're very super smart and we know our job and we kind of forget that there's a business that exists around us.
Yeah.
And so I think, it took me a while to figure that out. I'm also not the most, I'm a very direct person.
Hmm.
So I don't know if anybody's ever taken a disc exam. It's kind of like the Myers-Briggs thing, but there's four categories. And this was quite a while ago. I was a perfect 50-50 split on being direct and like detail orientated. So
Hmm.
there was no room for like social this or that or like empathy. It was very much this is how to do it and go do it and leave me alone. Uh,
But so I
and
guess you
don't
had
come
to
back to
learn
me
the
with
magic word
problems.
of tact, which
Yeah,
the quote I saw was tact is the ability to tell someone to go to hell so they anticipate the journey.
yeah, exactly. So, yeah, so I definitely struggle, especially coming from a military background, coming from the Marine Corps into the civilian world. There was a lot I look back on some of the things that I did, and I was like, oh man, I owe some people some apologies, because you have a different mindset of just expecting people to get things done, and so that was more of a leadership journey thing for me. But I think that's one of the a couple of the takeaways there is like understanding that there's a bigger business, and that the other part is giving people the ability to grow, right? Micromanagers do this, and I know that's a bad word, but generally speaking, like the Jimmy Fallon character on SNL who just like moves the guy out of the way and does the thing for him all the
Oh
time.
yeah.
Um, we all have people who probably work for us and are going to screw things up, and they need to screw those things up. They need to go and make mistakes. Don't take that away from them, right?
Mhm.
Just because you can do it and get it done faster doesn't mean that that's better for everybody.
Yeah. And so you mentioned your prior service, and thank you for your service, by the way, in the Marine Corps. Uh, there's a lot of good parallels because a lot of folks think that government and military works a lot differently from the commercial world, and in some perspectives they're not wrong. But and I work in the Department of Defense for a long time myself, and I currently do in the Middle East. But one of the things I've had to accept early on was that operations and mission trump everything, right?
Yeah.
And it's very similar, like what you just said about operations of a business is going to trump all the great things we want to do in security. Like we want to do this, and there's all these things we're trying to achieve, but our priorities on the technical security side are always competing against the business operations side. But we also have to learn that business operations is going to trump anything. It's like, hey, at some point, someone's going to make the decision to put that server back online. We have not had the time to eradicate all the artifacts, to do all of the thorough vulnerability analysis, etc., to say 100% this is clean and ready to go back in operation. Sometimes just say, get it back up right now. And that's really how it is in the Department of Defense. And, when there's a mission and operations where human lives could be at stake, operations trump security every day of the week. And so I think that there are some parallels we can make between both of these worlds. What are your thoughts on that statement?
Yeah, it's interesting because I always talk, we all know the CIA triad, right?
Hmm.
In healthcare and in manufacturing, that is upside down because availability is absolutely more important than confidentiality and integrity for those organizations, especially in healthcare, right? When it comes down to, and I think this is where, like, from the DoD side too, having a system that, has a potential for, has a vulnerability or an issue with it, is very much going to happen if it means, being able to keep people alive at the end of the day. Or, cranking out widgets because when that machine is down, it's going to cost them, $100,000 an hour, right? They're going to easily be able to weigh that stuff down. So I think that's, again, the importance, and the analogy I always use is the business. I say the business is a race car. It's an F1 car, right? And cybersecurity is the brakes and the seatbelt and the harness and all the safety stuff, right? We're very important, but we are not the reason everybody's there, right?
That they're to win the
Everybody's not
race.
watching the race to watch us, to watch the car slow down, right? The mission of the company is to win the race. Our job is when they're going into the corner at 200 miles an hour, they tap the brakes, they need to work, right?
Yeah.
And I think when you understand that as a security professional, you understand your role in the company. Now it's a lot easier to fit in and be part of the team. The thing that we haven't gotten to that I like to see and preach about a lot is HR is part of everything you do at work, right? Everything you do at work has some HR. Cybersecurity should be the same way, right?
Mhm.
You're buying a new system, there's a cybersecurity process part of that. You got somebody contractor coming on board, there's cybersecurity. Like we all know that because we have all the frameworks that say that, but the business doesn't always have that. So really all they need to do is integrate cybersecurity into the rest of that business. And then it's much easier, like you said, those checks and balances. The idea that, well, yeah, we have to do this because the same thing happens, space launches, right? If there's certain timing to go, I'll reference a fantastical one, but like you've got The Martian, right?
Yeah.
With Mark Watney. What did they do? They foregoed some security, some safety checks because they really needed to get that basket of food shot up into the air quick enough for them. It backfired on them, but they made that decision. That was based on risk. And
Mhm.
that's really what it comes down to, is making sure that everything's part, that we're part of the process.
So you just mentioned human resources just now, and there's a hot take in industry, and some people are siding with this perspective that eventually your cybersecurity team and HR are going to merge. And their justification behind this is because of GRC, governance risks, and all the security policies have to go hand in hand with HR policies. And since HR departments have been ingrained in companies for a lot longer, that they believe that makes a natural shift to blend those two and having like your HR director effectively be the new CISO, if you will, or CSO of the organization. Again, that's a very hot take. It's divided some rooms of people that believe they should be independent, but they do have a strong case about the policy, the governance risk, and then tying into HR because when employees come in the company, they got to do a bunch of HR paperwork, and usually when they get their new accounts, they got to deal with the IT and the security departments to get their AUPs and user agreements and all that signed to get
Yeah.
their account access and the technical equipment that they need to perform their jobs. What is your take on that?
Yeah, that's a hot take. And I'm going to say anybody who agrees with that doesn't understand cybersecurity. Because everything I just said about security should be part of business processes, you don't need HR to run that. They're not equipped to do that. We just need our stuff in their processes.
Hmm.
Just like procurement shouldn't run cybersecurity because every time you buy a new piece of technology, cybersecurity should know about it, right? That's not how it works. Now, I have seen, especially in large organizations, CISOs and security teams will report to legal. That
Hmm.
very much.
Yeah.
There are a lot of organizations who are legally driven, and that a lot of those times it makes business sense. And honestly, if I'm the CISO, I'd much rather report to legal than a CIO or a CTO because again, we're on the same team effectively. Our job
Yeah.
is to limit and mitigate risk, where their job is do things quickly, uptime. It's different, like it's competing priorities. So yeah, I don't. Also, I can't imagine um, anybody with HR training trying to even fathom doing the stuff
No.
that a CEO has to do,
Yeah.
especially at a small like a sub 2,000 per 3,000 person organization. No.
Yeah.
I'm usually pretty balanced and like non-controversial in these, but like no, that won't happen.
So here's
The
one of
army.
my oh
Go ahead.
Oh yeah.
No.
So this is my favorite question for all my guests. It's the day one question. And what the day one question is, if we could go back in time to the day one when you made the decision that, hey, I want to do IT cyber stuff, this is the path for me. Is there a story there that you could share with us?
Yeah, it's not too exciting. I don't think I'd spent I spent 8 years in the Marine Corps, and somewhere in my second 4 year stint, I was working in a room with thick walls and lots of wires, me and one other guy, contractor, doing all the kind of stuff. And doing like WSUS updates and reporting back on information assurance, sort of all the basic stuff. And somebody brought in a snort box. And for everybody on this listening to it that doesn't know what it is, you're very young. Congratulations. But that's what IDS is today. That was the first IDS that kind of existed. And I was like, oh, this is kind of neat. And then I started seeing like we obviously had a SOC in the Marine Corps, and I knew some people there. And so basically what happened was um, I had started to see, okay, this cybersecurity thing, this looks like a really good job opportunity. And so I did some research, and at that, it was really at that, I'm a very driven and ambitious person. So it was pretty much at that point, I was like, well, I'm gonna be a CISO. Like that's my goal in life now is to like become a CISO for some organization. And at that point, I basically started doing everything I could. I started taking on any courses I could. I tried to line up, everything else I did from that point on to put me on that path to becoming a CISO. And part of that was again, I'm pretty sure that this industry is going to be around forever, and it looks like I can make a lot of money.
Hey, that's a good reason as any. So thanks for sharing that day one story. My next question is, along your journey to this point, and think of this more like an Oscars acceptance speech. We already know there's never enough time to name all the people that have had a positive impact on your career so far. But people like coworkers, colleagues, managers, directors, or just people that other professionals in industry you admired and looked up to. Who are some people that? And again, it's not meant to be a name dropping session. It's more to pay
Yeah, yeah.
homage to the folks that have had a positive impact on your career.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I had when I first got into consulting, like my second gig, I had an SVP there who I literally went up to, again, me being super ambitious, and was like, you need to groom me. And he was like, well, okay. He's like, but you need thick skin. I'm like, yeah, no problem. And he's a former Accenture partner, McKinsey guy. And then I worked with him. And then I had a coworker who was another former Accenture partner and an Arthur Anderson. Like I had a couple of these folks who all came from the like big four consulting world that kind of beat me into shape, right? And kind of showed me the ways of tact. It
Yeah.
was definitely one of those things. Presentation, all that good stuff. Because believe me, I could get up on stage and talk to anybody about anything for a long time. But I had another VP I worked with very closely. Him and I just ran the channel together. I was the tech person, he was the salesperson. Taught me a lot about sales, right? He was the person probably most who as a perfectionist, and anybody who's ever worked in pre-sales and has had to scope or write RFPs and stuff, you get the RFP back and you're like, oh, this is just terribly written. This is the right way to do it. And you will spend hundreds of hours crafting that response to get the right response. And I learned you don't need that.
Mhm.
Right? He's the one that taught me that sometimes good enough is good enough, right? Like you
Yeah.
need to do this to win. Don't waste your time. Like it doesn't have to be perfect. And I think that was pretty awesome for me. That those kind of folks. And then I've had some colleagues I've worked with that I've had a lot of good trusts with that the goal I think the sort of takeaway for other people is you should have people in your life, in your network, who just want to work with you and you want to
Yeah.
work with. That's the best way to get a job is when Will's available, five people call you and go, hey, 2 gigs ago, a buddy of mine was like, I don't have a position for you, but I do have an open position. I'm just going to shove you in there,
Hmm.
pay you, and then you're going to spend, 60 days looking around, and then we'll write you a job description, right? And that's kind of how a couple of my last gigs have gone. And that's something I think that would not have happened if I'd have just kept my head down and not been helped out by those great people.
One of the things you had mentioned that I want to kind of come back to, and we talked earlier about your expertise of translating the technical to the business. But any professional watching this right now, if you're definitely wanting to go into like a CISO or any leadership path, one of the key skills that I would implore anyone to take some time and learn and study is sales. Because you mentioned you work with a guy that did the sales part of the channel. And the thing with sales is a way of presenting yourself or presenting ideas to where it makes the other person agree and to say yes to, right? And that's a very important skill set that more of us in the technical cyber side really need to have because again, when people are constantly talking about the frustration of I can't get them to understand the risk, I can't get them to see it my way. There's where sales comes in. Maybe taking some courses in sales, folks. So that's going to be a little a tidbit that I leave for people watching right now is, consider taking some sales courses because that may open up a whole new world to you to help with that translation of the tech to the business. So what I like to do now, Will, I like to do what's called my moment of levity, where I'm going to shoot you some rapid fire questions. It's just meant for fun, just to take a break from the tech speak for a minute. So we're going to hit you fast right out the gate. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
Oh, geez. Is a hot dog a sandwich? No, and I love
Oh,
sandwiches.
hey, Will says hot dog is not a sandwich. You heard it right there. Next question, staying with the food, cake or pie?
Pie.
Pie.
Pie
What
is
kind of pie?
was key lime probably gonna be top for me.
All right, hot or cold key lime pie?
Cold.
Cold,
Ugh.
you got to have it cold.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I think I already know the answer based on some of the stuff I see in the background there, but this one splits every room of IT professionals. So here we go. Star Wars or Star Trek?
For anybody who can't see, there's a painting of Chopper from Star Wars. This is a commissioned artwork that I had. This isn't like I paid somebody to paint this, and this is hanging up on my
Nice.
wall. So yeah, Star Wars.
Star Wars.
No
Which
hate towards
tri
Star Trek though.
which trilogy is your favorite?
Of like all
Of the
trilogies
of
or in
all
the
the
Star Wars?
no, I'm talking about of the Star Wars universe,
Oh,
the OG, the prequels, and then the last three.
all right. So I'm a super nerd here. So from the trilogy perspective, the original is my favorite. I believe the best Star Wars that exists and the best way for people to watch it is the Clone Wars cartoon, the whole show. That is impressive storytelling, very, very condensed. The best live action Star Wars is the Andor television series.
I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard great things about it.
It's life changing.
Who's your favorite character in that universe
Oh,
of the whole Star
Ahsoka.
Wars franchise?
Yeah, Ahsoka. I actually have a tattoo.
Oh, all right. Awesome. And so, what are some of those Lego sets that are? I'm assuming they're Lego because I think I see the
Yeah,
red.
yeah, yeah. That's K2SO and that's Chopper and that's Ahsoka's ship back there. And then I've got about a bazillion other ones over here that aren't even put together yet. I don't have enough room for them all. That's the problem.
And then my last question is, what has been your favorite book of all time that you've read, and what was the last book that you've read?
So, my favorite book of all time is Ender's Game by Orson Scott
Great
Card. I
book.
think most people know about that.
Mhm.
I'm currently reading Mistborn by Brendan Sanderson, just about done with it. So I'd say that's probably where, and that all stems from, I'm actually writing a science fiction novel, and I've done Brandon Sanderson does he does this lecture series every couple of years at BYU, and he records it and puts it on YouTube, so you can watch it for free and learn how to write from one of the greats. And so I watched that a little while ago, and it got me inspired. And so I'm reading one of his books, and now I'm writing with some of his notes.
Excellent. Any little tidbits you can share about the story that you're writing, or you want to keep that in the wraps for now?
No, I mean, yeah. So, well, the funny thing is, if you go by his words, you sell your fifth novel. So your first ones are kind of like scraps. So like I'm going through the revision process now and going, well, do I need to rewrite this or start the next one? But no, this one is it's a space pirate who's living in basically a corrupt system, and he's debating on whether or not he will sort of change the system.
Okay. Always fight the power, fight the systems. Those are always good. The
That's how. I mean, yeah,
rapscallions, the
you gotta have a
rogues.
change.
So, so let's get back to one of the other things that you work with is the WIC advisory. So let's talk a little bit about the mission for the WIC advisory. And
Yeah,
no
that's
affiliation
my.
to John Wick, correct?
No, oh God, I wish. You can see that one over here. That is. Yeah, no, that it's actually my initials with I. It's funny enough. Yeah, so that's just how, and then the I kind of fit in there. No, so that started a long time ago when I first got into consulting, kind of like everybody else. Somebody I know is like, hey, my buddy's company, they're really small. They need a PCI policy, or they've got
Mhm.
this big client he's got 200 questions they need to answer. They don't know it. So virtual CISO, security consulting advisory. So it kind of started out as that. It was just a way to, legally be able to count that money. And I had it wasn't a lot. And then I found a couple of MSPs who wanted to be MSSPs and wanted to start selling cybersecurity and become more serious about it, not just be like, oh, we have Tenable and we run a scan, we're your cybersecurity company
Mhm.
now. So I'd had a couple of them where I would assess the organization, give them a roadmap, and I thought, oh, this could be a business. And then, of course, I went down the rabbit hole of MSPs, and that's a very big, diverse organ. Some is just like one or two guys with a truck who do break fix work, and some of them, obviously, the really big ones that are out there. There just wasn't enough sustainability in there for a business. But I did know a lot of people who were starting businesses, and I knew a lot of people in cybersecurity, and a lot of people who come up with new products are very technical, and they would be like, "Oh, I created this really cool thing. I don't know how to talk to a CISO or a CEO or how to market this or what to say about it." A good friend of mine now that I actually still, talk to regularly when I was working somewhere, and this was just by happenstance, he was pitching his product to us, and I was like, "Hey, send over your one pager," and I looked at it and I was like, "I'm going to give you some free advice. This is crap." I was like, "You're not telling me the benefits. You're giving me all your blinky lights, which are great, but I don't care. You're not showing me where my pain is or how this is going to help."
Mhm.
And that made me realize I see things differently and I can help with that translation. So that whole advisory company just basically stemmed out of people who in the startup space who have some type of product or solution they want to sell and needing to understand how do they market it? How do they sell it? Like I have a client who, we started off, he's like, "This is my website." And I'm like, "This is too soft. This is too passive. This is, a lot of the psychology that they don't think about as technical cybersecurity people, and being able to translate that. And a lot of it too, you get to leverage my network and I connect you with different people and, oh, you've got something in the SOC space. Cool. I know, half a dozen SOC managers I'll connect you to and they'll take a look at it. Right. And so that's what it's kind of been. It's cool little project. It's not anything. I'm not retiring off of it or anything right now, but it's out there for sure.
One of the things that you talk about is, helping people with that idea, and then sometimes it's the execution or how it's displayed to others, right? And
Yeah.
so I do this a lot, and myself with coworkers, colleagues, and other business connections where they'll bring an idea to me, and I've had recently, just a few months ago, brilliant idea, like one that even when I started searching and Google, ChatGPT, Grok, trying to see if it could scour more than I could in a search to see if anyone else had this out there in the market. And to my surprise, no one did. And I was like, this is a multi-million dollar idea. And I was like, this is going to be great. Fast forward a few months later, the execution was very poor. Like when I saw the execution, I just hung my head down like, it's everything. Like you get that one time, the first time make a good first impression, right? And it faltered really badly. And then so I had some discussions with them. I'm actually taking that idea and I'm going to execute it in the next 6 to 12 months, with their permission. I've made an
Sure,
agreement with
sure.
them. But it's one of those things like when I mentioned earlier about marketing and of course sales, which are two separately learned skill paths, folks. Most people think
Yeah.
marketing and sales are one and the same. They're two different things. Marketing is getting eyeballs to stay on your ad or on
Demand
what you're
gen.
trying to tell them long enough. But the sales part is how do you convince them to go ahead and hand their money over? Here's my credit card. That's a whole separately learned skill set. So, and I know we could definitely talk about that for hours and hours, but I do want to respect your time. So, one of the things is, you mentioned that you're great at translation, right? Is there some resources besides watching the Keyboard Samurai podcast, perhaps? But is there a blog post, a site? Is there a couple of folks in the industry that you would say, hey, watch their YouTube channels, or should we just watch an episode or two that you may have us link down in the description below to help with people get on the path of learning how to be that translator?
Yeah. You know, I get this question, not exactly. I always get asked something, someone is like, what should I read or how do I, what do I do? Like, what do you recommend? And because I've learned by just banging my head in the wall and then bouncing in the other direction, I've never been that guy that read a bunch of like leadership books or did that. So I will say to self plug a little bit, but yeah, my LinkedIn content is like 80 to 90% of that conversation. So similarly, when I tell if I like there are other people who looking for other skills, I'm like, oh, go follow these people. And you could like watch their, read their thread for an hour, you'll learn how to be a better salesperson or whatever. I would say with my content, like because it is mostly I try to there's value for a CISO reading it, obviously, but also like a CEO of a company could read it, and be like, oh, I get this, right? So you can kind of learn that translation skill. I do have a newsletter too, where I talk a little bit about that stuff. But yeah, I wish I could tell you like I think um I think the best practice is to find something about business that interests you. You mentioned earlier about getting an MBA. So
Mhm.
I have my master's in information security management. I got that in 2010 because you had to have to become a CISO, like that was the path, right? I didn't get my MBA like a lot of other people did, but I did take a like executive MBA course, like a 6 month condensed course to teach me like, here's how finance works, here's how,
Mhm.
the economy, all this kind of like give you kind of the foundational how to run a business kind of stuff. I do think it's good to if you can find something of interest there, and there's probably plenty of free resources that you can rabbit hole down just to get a little bit of understanding of the business, and then just use that to put things into context with what you know.
I love that. So a lot of us professionals, we're super busy with our day jobs, right? But we some often find time, we carve out time for causes, nonprofits, charities,
Mm.
volunteer organizations that are doing positive good work in the world. Whether we give of our time or money or just our energy into sharing about them. So the goal of this question, is there such an organization that's doing some positive work in the world that you'd like to shine a light on?
I have somewhere around 1999, 2000 every year participated in Toys for Tots, the Marine Corps thing. Obviously when you're a Marine, you don't have a choice, right? You're like,
Mhm.
go buy a toy, you're gonna run, and then you're gonna put the toy in the thing. But later on in life, I was able to, leverage some of my platform to get people to give and, go to Target and spend, a couple hundred, couple $1,000s and fill up a truck and be able to take it off. That's one that I kind of invest in every year, whether I do something with, gathering other, or whether we just, pull from our own resources. Most things that support veterans, like I've presented at VetSec a couple times. I'm doing something now for Cyber Labs. Cyber Labs Con is coming up in about a month. That supports, I want to say, next gen cyber. So it's a nonprofit that does like helping people get the next generation of cybersecurity professionals get in there. And that's a free conference as well too. So you can pull up my Rihanna Schultz. She runs all that stuff over there. So yeah, those are the ones that I kind of participate in.
Excellent. So speaking of that, that's already one event. For the rest of your 2026, what are some of the major events, milestones, and goals and accomplishments you hope to make this year?
Um, I'm do so last year I did a lot of speaking engagements to build up my I've been speaking forever. But like I intentionally went out and videotaped every single one of my events that I did so that I could get like a sizzle reel together so that
Uh-huh.
I can be like, hey, come hire me as a speaker. And so now I have a few paid gigs with some pretty cool companies. I can't mention them right now, but some private ones. And I'm still doing, I still applied for a couple of B-sides, things like that. I'm looking at yeah, I mean, right now with VLogix, I'm really focused on. I love where that I get to come here and kind of not rebuild, but like um, I have a lot of trust within my leadership team to be like, Will, you know the right way to do this, so change whatever you need to. So everything from we don't know who you are to let's sign the deal, all that sales and marketing stuff, all that content, building out. I'm doing a lot of partnerships with people in specific industries. I've got a lot of joint blogs that we worked out together. I was telling my CEO today, I've probably got 30, 40 pieces of content ready to go, and I just don't have enough hands to like push send on the button right now. Um, so there's that, but yeah, I do have some other gigs where I should be speaking at, but I don't have anything Houston SecCon. So I got my fingers crossed for, well, it's Cyber SecCon now. In the fall, I think that one's going on. I have my CFP in for that one too.
And you have your book that you're still working on too. So,
Yeah, oh, and it's odd you say that because I have debated and probably will write a cybersecurity business book of some kind. The plan there will be like a year ramp to get that to it's because it's not about cranking the words out. It's about, people actually reading it once it's written, and that requires runway.
yeah. So, with your time in the Marine Corps, what are some of the principles or lessons that you learned in your time in the Marine Corps that you carry with you today in your career?
I'll tell who anybody who was a Marine will know what this is. Anybody who wasn't can go Google it, ChatGPT. It is JJ did tie buckle. So it's an acronym, and each of those letters stands for something. You can go look them all up. They're all very, very good things. But one of those D's is decisiveness. And this is one of those, a good decision now is better than perfect decision too late kind of thing. Um,
I
you
like
know,
that.
and that goes back to, you know, uh, leaders have to make decisions. The reason the security leadership has to translate and give them basically serve it up on a platter and make it very easy for them is because they have 1,500 other decisions to make that day, and yours is just one of them, right? It may be the most important to you, but it's not the most important to everybody. And so I think that ability to be decisive and be like, yeah, this is a good idea. We should go ahead and do it, right? Also improvise, adapt, and overcome. Uh, that is not Bear Grylls. That was the United States Marine Corps. That existed long before Bear was ever born. But again, yeah, that's something that I constantly live by. And then the mindset of just I'll figure it out, right? The idea of I love to hire people who I know that's their mindset because I can say, oh, yeah, yeah, so and so, I know I can bring you on. And if I say, we've got to do this thing and this is the outcome we need, can you go figure this out and just bring me back? I had a first sergeant who used to tell me, spare me the labor pains, show me the baby. And that's exactly what I want. I'm not saying you can't come back and ask me for help, like, hey, you've been stuck, here's a thing or two. But for the most part, I take that mindset of like, well, you're going to give me something to do. I'm going to go do everything I can to possibly figure this out and then just bring you back the result you want. And then my last one I will say is this was not the Marine Corps. This was something I learned more recently is ask for feedback, not advice.
Mm,
If you
okay.
ask someone for advice, you're generally going to get their story. And this is what I've done, and this is how I've done things. If you say, I've done this, and here's where I am, what do you think? Then they have context to look on, and then, they're still going to be able to put their stuff in, but it's going to be more geared towards you, and you're going to get better guidance.
I love that. A lot of folks that I also mentor and coach into their transition from the uniform into the commercial and the contracting world. A lot of the stuff I get met with is, a lot of folks, you mentioned earlier in the episode about imposter syndrome, but a lot of folks just feel like I'm not technical, I'm not that geek, I'm not that guy, right? Whatever the perspectives they have of the different people in the industry, right? But I always tell them that, look, can you read? Can you comprehend? And of course, I break it down that simple. Like they're confused. They're like, of course I can read and comprehend. I said, you can do anything in cyber if you can read and comprehend. And I've said it a lot on these podcast episodes and the channels, but it's so true, folks. If you're watching this right now, if you can read and comprehend, you can do anything in cyber. I would be remiss if I did not bring this up, but there's a portrait, I think, of you with a bulldog right over your shoulder. Is there a story there? And is that dog still with you?
Yeah, yeah, this is Hodor. He's upstairs.
Okay.
This is the
That
stepbrother's
is
image.
epic.
Yeah, my wife bought this for me. His name's Hodor. So
Hold
if you like
on.
Game of
A
Thrones,
Game of Thrones
uh,
reference?
yeah, and he's a big dumb bulldog. So like a Marine, he does everything the hard way. But yeah, she bought me that just like a couple months ago, and she was like, "This is the best present I've ever bought you."
That
And
is
yeah, it's
epic.
fantastic. I love it. It's great.
So we're coming up on our time, and I definitely want to respect your time. So all of my guests, and this was not in the agenda question, so all my guests this season been, caught a little off guard of this. So it's the final word, and what the final word is, you could talk tech, you could talk business translation, you could talk your favorite color of the rainbow, your favorite cuisine, favorite place you've been to. It doesn't matter what you want to talk about, whatever you want to talk about, the final word is yours.
Oh man, I need to prepare for these better because you're like the third person to like pull this on me, and I'm always like, I spend a lot of time trying to be really profound in the things I say as a writer and a creative in the technical space. Um, and now I don't have anything to say, so I'm going to stare at the screen blankly. Final word.
That's authentic and real, folks.
No, I dig it. Geez. You know what? I think there something I haven't mentioned that I think is super important is just be kind. Like at the end of the day, like it's very easy to do. I've never regretted being kind. I've always regretted any kind of like emotional, pissed off kind of reaction I've ever had in my life. So yeah, that'd be my send off.
Excellent. Well said. Will, thank you for being on the Top Cyber Pro podcast.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate you.